Shalom, it's David Benkoff, the Broadway Maven. At a recent class, we examined the question of what is the Golden Age of Broadway and why does it matter? It's probably the most famous phrase in musical theater, the Golden Age of Broadway. But what exactly does it mean, and does the era truly deserve the title? The term Golden Age functions as both a historical marker and a value judgment. It generally refers to musicals written and staged between 1943 and the early 1960s, but it also implies that something about this era was exceptional, artistically, commercially, and culturally. Before we go any further, let's take a moment to define the boundaries of that term and the assumptions it carries. The Golden Age of Broadway is generally understood to span the 2 decades between 1943 and the early 1960s, beginning with Oklahoma and ending somewhere around Fiddler on the Roof, Hello Dolly, or Funny Girl, depending on whom you ask. What marks the beginning of the post-Golden Age is more contested. Some would say cabaret, some hair, some company. There's no universal cutoff, but nearly everyone agrees that the era begins with Rodgers and Hammerstein and ends when their style no longer defines Broadway's mainstream. Before we break it down analytically, let's just enjoy a textbook example. This number from The Sound of Music is pure Golden Age DNA, a clear narrative purpose, instantly memorable melody, and so much charm it's practically weaponized.
A deer, a female deer. Hey! A drop of golden sun. Me! A name I call myself. Far! A long, long way to run. So, a needle pulling thread. La! A note to follow. So, tea! A drink with jam and bread. That will bring us back to...
You can already see and hear it. Song and story working hand in hand, characters bonding, and every note reinforcing the emotional world of the show. This is what Golden Age musicals do. Now, let's go over 5 characteristics of a Golden Age musical. Number 1, integrated storytelling. One of the most defining characteristics of Golden Age musicals is integration. The idea that songs don't interrupt the story, they are the story. In the best examples, music isn't just decorative, it builds character, reveals conflict, and pushes the plot forward. Audiences didn't just leave humming the tunes, they left understanding the people who sang them. Let's watch a scene from 1957's West Side Story that captures this perfectly.
We're gonna rock it tonight. We're gonna jazz it tonight. We're gonna dance it tonight.
We're gonna mix it tonight.
Today the minutes seem like days. The hours go so slow. They will go to stop them once and for all. Once and for all. The sharks are gonna have their way. The sharks are gonna have their way.
What makes this moment so powerful isn't just the soaring harmonies or Bernstein's music. It's how the song unites multiple storylines in real time. Each group sings with urgency, each character's goals are in conflict, and the audience feels the tension build to the inevitable confrontation. No one's standing still, the music is the momentum. You can see this kind of integration again in Carousel, where soliloquy isn't just a showpiece, it's a full-blown psychological monologue. We watch Billy Bigelow shift from excitement to panic, from swagger to vulnerability, all through song. He starts imagining life with a son and ends terrified of raising a daughter. The character turns a corner, and so does the plot. And in Guys and Dolls, Sit Down, You're Rockin' the Boat isn't just a showstopper, it's a survival strategy. Nicely, Nicely Johnson invents a religious awakening on the spot to distract the mission from falling apart. His improv saves the day, wins over the crowd, and yanks the plot back from disaster, all in song. That's not filler, that's structure. Golden Age songs don't hit pause on the story, they are the story. Number 2, emotional and moral clarity. Golden Age musicals often present a world where emotional stakes are high and moral positions are unmistakable. These shows don't always avoid complexity, but they usually made sure the audience understood what the characters felt and where the show itself stood. Whether the values expressed are admirable or uncomfortable, they're delivered with confidence, clarity, and conviction. Let's take a look at a number that exemplifies this bold moral voice.
It happens after you're born. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made, and people whose skin is a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be carefully taught.
There's nothing subtle about this. A character sings, plainly and urgently, that racism is not natural, it's learned. For 1949, this was radical. The song doesn't hedge, it doesn't soften, and it doesn't try to be likable. It stakes a claim. And in doing so, it defines not just the character's belief, but the show's belief. You'll find similar directness in Damn Yankees, where heart becomes a kind of thesis for the show's values. Resilience, belief, and team spirit matter more than winning. It's a comic number, but its message is clear and unshakable. And in Gypsy, Some People, which we'll be talking about later, gives us Rose in full force, hungry, unapologetic, and furious that the world doesn't recognize her greatness. We may not share her values, but we can't mistake them. Her ambition is crystal clear, and her emotional logic, however flawed, is coherent and passionately expressed. In this era of Broadway, characters rarely fumble for meaning. Their feelings and beliefs are loud, legible, and staged for maximum impact. Golden Age musicals didn't whisper, they declared. Number 3, romantic centrality. If there's one narrative constant in the Golden Age musical, it's this: romance is the engine. Nearly every major show from the era centers around a love story, often idealized, occasionally rocky, but nearly always conclusive. Love is what drives the action, changes the characters, and resolves the plot. Let's look at a number that captures the charm and structure of the Golden Age romance.
There were bells on the hill, but I never heard them ringing. No, I never heard them at all till there was you. There were birds in the sky, but
The song from The Music Man isn't just a love song, it's a transformation. Marion, the guarded librarian, confesses that Harold Hill has changed her world. She's not listing reasons, she's revealing a shift in perception in self. The song doesn't just affirm that she's in love, it shows us how she changed and why it matters to the story. Romantic centrality doesn't mean every couple is healthy, but it does mean that love is nearly always the goal. So in Kiss Me Kate, the sparring partners in Wunderbar mock and mirror their real feelings until the line between stage romance and actual romance disappears. The conflict may be comic, but the structure is serious. They're meant to end up together. And in Finian's Rainbow, love is again the engine that connects the musical's fantasy plot to its political satire. Ugg, the leprechaun, literally becomes human because he falls in love. Even magic bends to romance. In Golden Age musicals, love isn't just a subplot, it's the spine. You can trace nearly every show's emotional arc through who falls for whom, when, and what it costs. Number 4, memorable melodies and lush orchestration. But it wasn't just story structure that defined these shows, it was the sound of them. Even before you analyze the narrative, the music itself makes an emotional case. These were shows built to soar, musically lush, melodically generous, and orchestrated with an emotional sweep that helped define mid-century American theater. Their songs weren't just beautiful, they were memorable, singable, and often symphonic in scale. Let's hear one of the era's most vocally and orchestrally iconic numbers, If Ever I Would Leave You.
If ever I would leave you, it wouldn't be in summer. Seeing you in summer, I never would go. Your hair streaked with sunlight, your lips red as flame, your face with a luster that puts gold to shame.
From its first notes, this song tells you everything about the Golden Age aesthetic, a sweeping melody, rich orchestration, and emotion layered into every musical phrase. It doesn't just express love, it wraps the audience in it. The seasons pass, but the music stays still, frozen in romantic longing. This kind of melodic and emotional fullness shows up across the era. In My Fair Lady, I Could Have Danced All Night lifts Eliza off the ground musically. Its melody floats, spins, and glides just like the character does in the moment. It's musical joy shaped with elegance. And in Annie Gets Your Gun, they say it's wonderful, delivers earnest, unvarnished romantic yearning. It's simple, but it lands, because the melody and arrangement are designed to let the feelings come through unfiltered. Golden Age scores weren't shy, they wanted you to feel, boldly, unambiguously, and in full orchestral color. Number 5, book first structure. One of the most important innovations of the Golden Age was how musicals were built. These weren't loosely assembled collections of songs. They were constructed with the book, or the script, as the foundation. Songs were written to serve dramatic moments, to reveal character, heighten conflict, or move the plot forward. This was a departure from earlier musicals, which often featured songs strung together by a flimsy plot or built around a star's persona. Let's look at a number that makes this crystal clear: The Farmer and the Cowman from Oklahoma.
I'd like to say a word for the farmer.
Well, say it!
We come out west and made a lot of changes.
He come out west and built a lot of fences and built them right across our cattle ranges.
Why don't those dirt scratchers stay in Missouri where they belong?
We got just as much right here.
Oh, gentlemen, shut up! The farmer is a good and thrifty citizen.
Yeah, he's thrifty, all right.
No matter what the cowman says or thinks, you seldom see him drinking in a bar room.
Unless somebody else is buying drinks.
But the farmer and the cowman should be friends. Oh, the farmer and the cowman should be friends. The cowman ropes a cow with ease. The farmer steals her butter and cheese. But that's no reason why they can't be friends.
This isn't just a cheerful barn dance, it's a musical negotiation between two hostile groups, farmers and cowmen, who've been butting heads throughout the show. The number doesn't slow the action, it solves a problem. The plot requires a truce, and this song enacts it. Choreography, lyrics, and character dynamics all work together to diffuse tension. Take this number out, and the story breaks. We say this, you see the same principle in The King and I. In A Puzzlement, the king doesn't explain his internal conflict to another character, he sings it to himself. The song wasn't dropped in because the show needed a solo. It exists because we need to understand his indecision to follow his arc. And in The Pajama Game, Hey There turns a moment of private indecision into a fully staged internal conflict. Sid sings into a dictaphone to talk himself out of a romantic entanglement, then plays it back and argues with his own recording. It's clever, but it's not a gimmick. The song is the scene. It dramatizes his emotional paralysis and advances his character arc without any external action. Golden Age musicals weren't just tuneful, they were architectural. Their songs were placed with precision. Structurally woven into the drama, they helped propel. Of course, even golden light casts shadows. As useful as the Golden Age label is, it simplifies a much more complicated story. So coming up, let's look at 3 reasons why that frame, while helpful, can also mislead. We'll start with the artificial boundaries it imposes, then look at whose stories it centers, and finally, what it leaves out. Number 1, it created artificial boundaries. The most obvious issue is structural. The idea that Broadway experienced a golden, uninterrupted arc from Oklahoma in 1943 to Fiddler on the Roof in the early 1960s makes for a clean story, but not an honest one. Great shows don't respect borders. Pal Joey, 1940, had a morally ambiguous protagonist years before Oklahoma changed everything. And long after the so-called Golden Age ended, shows continued to echo its forms and values. La Cage aux Folles, 1983, for instance, feels structurally and emotionally rooted in Golden Age tradition. Its books-driven structure, romantic centrality, and lush melodic score feel directly descended from Golden Age values, even if its gay themes broke new ground. Likewise, Ragtime from 1998 combines social consciousness, character-driven storytelling, and sweeping orchestration in ways that recall the ambitions of South Pacific or Carousel more than it does its own turn of the millennium peers. Even Fiddler itself complicates the timeline. While it's often treated as the Golden Age's finale, Its thematic darkness, cultural specificity, and musical experimentation, including klezmer influences and a non-Western European setting, stretched the mold it's supposedly closing out. And shows like Cabaret, 1966, and Company, 1970, often cited as the beginning of something new, didn't fully abandon the tools of the era before them. They just used them to different ends. In short, the Golden Age framework is useful, but it's also misleading. It favors neat chronology over artistic continuity and familiar landmarks over less visible innovation, and it can cause us to overlook how flexible, fluid, and self referential the musical theater canon actually is. Number two, it included some people's stories and excluded others. Golden Age musicals told big emotional stories, but within a narrow frame. Their characters were usually white, straight, Gentile, and comfortably situated in a version of America that reflected mid century middle class ideals. There were outliers, but the vast majority of shows embraced a cultural default, whether consciously or not. That's striking when you consider who was writing them. Many of the most influential Broadway composers and lyricists, Rogers, Berlin, Lerner, Lesser, came from immigrant or minority backgrounds, often Jewish, but their shows rarely explored the lives or cultures they came from. Instead, their work gravitated toward a kind of cultural assimilation, writing not about themselves, but about the mainstream. Fiddler on the Roof, 1964, was one of the first truly successful musicals to center a Jewish story, and even that arrived at the very tail end of the era and was considered a commercial risk. When we talk about underrepresented creators, women are often an afterthought, but shouldn't be. While female writers were vastly outnumbered, they were not absent. Dorothy Fields had a long and distinguished career, co-writing lyrics for Annie Get Your Gun, Sweet Charity, and many others. Mary Rogers gave us Once Upon a Mattress, a major success. And Betty Comden, working with Adolph Green, was the lyricist for On the Town, Wonderful Town, and Bells Are Ringing. These women shaped the sound of the Golden Age, but their recognition rarely matches their output. It's not that they weren't there, it's that Broadway history, like Broadway billing, often put them second. And when we look to Black representation, the picture is even starker. The Golden Age was not a golden era for Black Broadway, not yet. There were moments, Carmen Jones, 1943, with an all-Black cast and score adapted from Bizet, and Lost in the Stars, 1949, a bold, if paternalistic treatment of apartheid. But these were rare and largely shaped by white writers, producers, and directors. There was no Black equivalent to Rogers or Lesser being given the reins to shape the genre. Most shows with Black performers were revues, cabarets, or side characters in predominantly white casts. Even Porgy and Bess, though revived during the Golden Age, was created in the 1930s and long critiqued for its stereotyped portrayals of Black life. The lack of Black-centered book musicals during this period wasn't due to a lack of talent. It was about access. The commercial and institutional gatekeepers of Broadway overwhelmingly favored stories that looked and sounded universal, by which they almost always meant white. What we now call Black Broadway, shows like The Wiz, Dreamgirls, Caroline or Change, A Strange Loop, would have to wait for a different era entirely. The Golden Age canon reflects enormous musical and emotional richness, but it also reflects who had power, who got produced, who got promoted, who got preserved. When we look at the dazzling surface, we have to remember what was left off stage. Number 3, it romanticizes an era whose values can today seem like a mixed bag at best. The term Golden Age doesn't just elevate the artistry of the era, it elevates its worldview. These musicals weren't just art, they were artifacts, shaped by and shaping the ideals of mid-century America. Some of these values still resonate: hope, resilience, emotional directness. Others, seen from today's vantage point, feel outdated, narrow, or even troubling. Many Golden Age musicals operate in moral absolutes. Heroes are upright, heroines are virtuous, villains are punished or reformed. That clarity can be emotional satisfying, but it can also flatten complexity. Carousel asks us to sympathize with a man who hits his wife. The King and I reimagines colonialism as a charming cultural exchange. The Music Man turns a con artist into a romantic hero, with redemption tied more to charm than accountability. These aren't fringe examples, they're woven into the emotional logic of the genre. Gender roles are especially rigid. Women sing about waiting, about changing, about surrendering, or proving they're worthy of love. There are memorable exceptions, Rose and Gypsy most of all, but they're usually framed as difficult, dangerous, or in need of softening. Men, meanwhile, are expected to lead, fix, act. Even when they harm others, the narrative often offers them grace without demanding growth. And queerness, nearly invisible, occasionally hinted at in subtext or camp-coded performance styles, but never openly centered or affirmed. The very structure of most Golden Age musicals assumes heterosexual romance as both the plot and the payoff. Love is destiny, marriage is the goal, and anyone outside that framework is either comic relief or left out entirely. None of this means these shows should be dismissed or canceled. They shouldn't. Their artistry remains extraordinary, their music, their characters, their structural innovations continue to inspire. But nostalgia can be blinding. When we call this era golden, we risk treating its values as neutral or ideal. We forget that what felt affirming to one audience may have felt alienating or worse to another. To engage with this era honestly, we need to hold two truths at once. These musicals glittered and they excluded. They elevated emotion, but sometimes erased complexity. Their stories moved millions, but they didn't tell everyone's story. If we want to keep calling the period a golden age, we have to admit that it was never pure gold. It was a mixed bag, brilliant, beloved, blinkered, and incomplete. Next week, we'll move into the 1960s and 1970s, an era of experimentation, upheaval, and reinvention. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Shalom, I'm David Benkoff, the Broadway Maven. The Broadway Maven is a vibrant educational community. Every month, members may attend 5 to 15 classes and other expert-led Broadway experiences, all for just $18. There's a membership link in the description. And you'll like these playlists.